Hello everyone, welcome to CommerceNet Scholars. In today's video, we'll be discussing about the next two developments that were witnessed in the management thought. We have already discussed the early contributions that were prevalent up till the 19th century. I told you in my previous video wherein we discussed the early contributions that majority of contributions, the predominant contributions were not made during this period. The major contribution that we witnessed during this period was the contribution given by Kautilya, which we have already discussed in our previous video. Talking about the next development was the scientific management that was prevalent in 1900 to 1930 that we have already discussed in my previous video. I'll be providing you the link in the description box. And the administrative, operational or general management given by Henry Fayol, which was prevalent from 1916 to 1940. We have discussed even that. So today the two approaches or the two developments or the evolutions that we'll be discussing today will be the human relations approach 1930 to 1950 and the social systems approach 1940 to 1950. So let's start with today's video, but before starting, a reminder for you all, watch the video till the end, do give it a like if you really like the video, share it with your friends as much as possible, and most important of all, subscribe the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Let's proceed with today's video. Talking about the human relations approach, we have to understand that it was entirely based upon the Hawthorne experiments. Whatever derivations we have in this approach were based upon the experiments that were referred to as the Hawthorne experiments. Now, what this experiment was all about, let's start. Hawthorne experiments were conducted to analyze the effect of physiological variables on the productivity of workers at Hawthorne plant of General Electric Company of USA by Elton Mayo, psychologist, Whitehead and Rothschild, sociologist, and William Dixon, company representative. Now, these are the people, the basic people who have been who have contributed to the human relations approach, and these were the people who conducted an experiment in the Hawthorne plant of General Electric Company of USA. Basically, they had conducted this experiment to analyze the effect of physiological variables. Physiological variables are the basic variables, the basic necessities that you need to fulfill to survive yourself. So basically, what effect these basic necessities have on the working of the workers in the organization, they had to analyze this aspect. Now, talking about the experiments that were conducted, experiments to determine the effects of changes in elimination on productivity, elimination experiments 24 to 27. From the time period 24 to 27, the experiment that was conducted was regarding the changes that were there in the elimination, the lightning effects and all. What effect does it had on the productivity of the workers? Next, the experiments to determine the effects of changes in working hours and other working conditions on productivity, relay assembly test room experiments 27 to 28. So next experiment that was conducted on the basis of the change in working hours and other working conditions. Next experiment, conducting plant-wide interviews to determine worker attitude and sentiments, mass interviewing program 28 to 30. So next experiment was conducted to have an interview, or you can say a questionnaire, to understand the attitude and the sentiments of the workers. And the last experiment was the determination of an analysis of social organization at work, bank wiring observation room experiments 31 to 32. So these were the four experiments that were carried out considering the different variables, that what effect do these variables have on the productivity of the workers. Hawthorne experiments found that there were many human factors which affected productivity of workers more than physiological factors. Therefore, the findings of Hawthorne experiments were termed as human relations approach. So what was the entire conclusion from this experiment? That whatever effect is there on the productivity, it is not merely because of the physiological variables, not because of the lightning or work conditions, but also due to the human factors. What are the social factors? What are the different facilities that are being provided to you? Which group are you living in? All that. So what were the findings? We'll discuss one by one. Findings in Hawthorne experiments. First is social factors in output. Whatever output an organization is getting is obviously dependent upon the social factors. Wherever we are talking about a worker working in an organization, we have to understand that motivating the workers is a requisite for the organization. The workers need to be motivated, and they can be motivated considering the social factors that will be proving to be a stimulant for them. Next, we have the group influence. Group influence, the group in which the workers are living. Obviously, when you're working in an organization, you won't only have a formal relationship, you'll have a group, you'll have a friend circle wherein you will be having an informal relationship. So what kind of effect did it had on the working of the organization, that was also discussed, and whatever was the shortcoming of the formal relationships, that was to be analyzed carefully. Next is the conflict. But obvious, when you're working in an organization, there might be a situation of conflict between two workers. Now, how that conflict has to be resolved, again, that was a task. Next is leadership. Leadership, I have told you a number of times that it's not always necessary that a boss is a leader. A good leader can be a good boss, but might not be possible that a good boss is a good leader, because if you have a bossy nature in you, you cannot say that you are a good leader. Leader is someone who takes along his team members and works accordingly. Not merely passing of a command or giving instructions is leadership, rather involving yourself in doing a work is referred to as leadership. So what effect leadership has, that was also analyzed. Next is supervision. Supervision, wherein a superior has to supervise the subordinate, that whether the person is performing the tasks perfectly or not. Next is communication. Whatever instructions the superior is giving to the subordinate, or whatever grievances the subordinate has to get addressed by the superior, they have to be maintained properly. And that would be done only through a proper channel of communication, which needs to be ensured. So these are certain factors that were really important while finding out that what are the factors that affect the productivity of the workers. So what are those factors? The social factors, the group influence in which the worker lives, the conflict between the workers. Obviously, if you have a conflict with somebody, you would not like to work with that person. So that again proves really important. Then we have leadership, supervision, and communication. Now, talking about the assessment of Hawthorne experiments, the Hawthorne researchers did not give sufficient attention to the attitudes that people bring with them to the workplace. They did not recognize the impact of such forces as class consciousness, role of unions, other extra plant forces on attitude of workers. So basically, some extra variables that need to be analyzed, including the attitudes and the behavior of workers, that was neglected. The Hawthorn studies looked upon the worker as a means to an end and not an end himself. They assumed acceptance of management's goal and looked on the worker as someone to be manipulated by management. They basically analyze the worker as a medium or a means to achieve the goals or the targets of the organization, not understanding the importance of the worker. The Hawthorn plant was not a typical plant because it was thoroughly unpleasant place to work. Therefore, the results could not be valid for others. It's but obvious that you do not have such horrible working conditions everywhere. The working conditions may vary. So since this was not a typical plant, the working conditions were not good. So it can be said that whatever results that were derived from this experiments might not be applied to other places or organizations. In spite of these criticisms, Hawthorne experiments have been recognized for discovering the importance of human factor in managing an organization. The experiments have stimulated many researchers to study the human problems in management. Now, whatever theories and all we have regarding the motivation or the leadership and all, that were basically you can say made possible only because the human factors were taken into consideration under the Hawthorne experiments. Next, we have the social systems approach, our next topic for today. Social systems approach of management has extended the application of human relations approach further. This approach was introduced by Wilfredo Pareto, a sociologist. His ideas were later developed by Chester Barnard, who synthesized the concept of social systems approach. Main features we'll discuss. So basically, who propounded it? Wilfredo Pareto, and it was later modified and developed by Chester Barnard. This is something you need to remember. What are the main features of it? An organization is a social system, a system of cultural relationships. Relationships exist among the external as well as internal environment of the organization. External environment, the factors on which you do not have a control, the government policies, the suppliers, the competitors, the consumers and all, while the internal environment, the company policies, the employees of the organization, all that. Cooperation among group members is necessary for the achievement of organizational objectives. But obvious, if you're not in harmony with the colleagues in the organizational objectives will be suffering, and it will not be easy for anyone to achieve them. For effective management, efforts should be made for establishing harmony between the goals of organization and goals of various groups therein. So, in order to achieve the goals of the organization properly, there needs to be a situation wherein there is a harmony between the objectives. Now, the contributions of Barnard, whatever developments he had made, he had given the concept of organization. He had made us understand that what organization is. It is a system of consciously coordinated activities of two or more persons. Whenever, if not only we are talking about an institute or a firm, even if we talk about a group of people who are working together, we say that they are an organization, they are organized and they are working towards achieving a common goal or objective. He also gave the concept of formal and informal organization, wherein a person needs to understand that a situation wherein a strict command relationship is established, wherein a superior is giving an order or directions to the subordinates, that will be a situation of formal relationship, wherein the friend circle or the group that is being there in the organization, which is not only discussing the work related problems but also discussing the problems at the personal level, that will be the informal organization. Now, the elements of organization. According to Barnard, there are 4 elements of a formal organization. These are system of departmentalization, so that people can specialize. Obviously, when you have different departments specialize in their particular field, like production department in production, sales department in sales, finance department in the work of finance, HR department in managing the human relations. A system of effective and efficient incentives so as to induce people to contribute to group action. A system of power which will lead to group members to accept the decisions of the executives, and a system of logical decision making. So these are the 4 basic elements of the organization. Next, we had the acceptance theory of authority. Acceptance theory of authority was something wherein Barnard said that it's not always possible that whatever a superior says is acceptable by the subordinate or the employee. A subordinate or the employee will be accepting a particular order or command only if he feels that whatever is being told is actually practical, possible and feasible, and at the same time is logical enough to be followed. So what were the conditions on which it was accepted? He can understand the order, whatever order is being given, it is completely understood. He believes that it is not inconsistent with the organizational purpose. He believes it to be compatible with his personal interest as a whole. He is mentally and physically able to comply with it. So these are the 4 conditions on which the authority will be accepted. Now we have the functions of executive. Whatever functions are being performed in the organization, whether we are talking about formulating the organizational purpose, securing the essential services, maintaining organizational communication, all that is known as the functions of executive. Motivation is another important factor, because unless a person is motivated enough to achieve a particular task, you do not provide him financial or non-financial incentives in the form of motivation, the person would be quite reluctant to do a task. Next is executive effectiveness. Whatever responsibility, whatever authority is being established, it needs to be really checked properly that whether it is being followed effectively or not. And the next we have is organizational equilibrium. Now, organizational equilibrium means whatever working is there in the organization, it is at par with the individuals in the organization, the goals of the organization and the society as a whole. None of the aspect is overlooked or not taken into consideration. So I just hope whatever we have done today is clear to you all. Any confusions you can mention down in the comment section below. That's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.